If you were like an archaeologist, say 13,000 years from now, looking back at the artifacts of today, July 29, 2026, what exactly would you see?
Right. Would you see the transcripts of a massive billion-dollar AI lawsuit?
Yeah, or would you see um, a humanoid robot getting banned from a high school classroom? Or maybe just the charred remains of a European heat wave?
Honestly, it could be any of them.
Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're joining us, you already know the daily news feed can feel like this absolute fire hose of completely unrelated chaos.
Sure.
But our mission today is to take a stack of daily briefings that seem entirely disconnected
Totally disconnected.
and show you the hidden architecture underneath them.
Because that is the real value for you, the listener, whether you're, prepping for a morning meeting or just trying to navigate your week, just understanding the surface level headlines, it isn't enough anymore. You really have to see the mechanics. So, today we're looking at a unified story about how the fundamental rules of our era, both physical and digital, are being rewritten in real time. We're going to connect the dots between global crises, the engineering of our tech infrastructure, and then finally end on a 13,000-year-old lesson in patience.
Let's jump right into the physical realities on the board today. And as we look at these geopolitical briefings, I want to frame this for you by looking strictly at the neutral facts of what was reported, right? Without endorsing any political sides whatsoever.
Just the raw briefing.
Exactly. So President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu held a 90-minute meeting in the Oval Office. And this is roughly 5 months after they launched that joint regime change effort in Iran.
Right. And based on the briefings, the strategic focus of that meeting covered a lot of ground. They discussed military strikes, expanding the Abraham Accords, and mapping a path to de-escalation. And the underlying objective they both articulated is preventing Iran from securing a nuclear weapon. But the crucial takeaway for anyone analyzing this from a geopolitical lens is the reported gap in the strategy.
The mechanics of it.
Exactly. Washington and Jerusalem are increasingly diverging on the actual mechanics of how this conflict should actually conclude.
And while that diplomatic pressure cooker is happening, the actual physical climate of Europe is quite literally on fire. We're looking at just devastating wildfires tearing across France and Spain right now.
And this is ahead of a fourth major heat wave.
Yes, a fourth heat wave. The forecasts in Spain are projecting temperatures over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The scale here is staggering. I mean, Spain just declared its first ever national wildfire emergency.
Wow.
They've got 800 square kilometers already burned and 79,000 people evacuated.
And in France, it's even more severe in terms of displacement. I think it's, 220,000 people?
Yeah, 220,000 people evacuated from the Gironde region alone. President Emmanuel Macron is publicly calling this the toughest crisis of its kind since the Second World War.
Which is a huge statement. When a head of state invokes World War II to describe a climate event, that signals a complete shift in how national resources are going to be mobilized going forward.
It really does. But here is where you kind of have to zoom out. The world feels like a frantic spinning plate routine right now.
Oh, totally.
You have the geopolitical plate of the Iran conflict wobbling, and you have the climate plate of these historic European fires wobbling violently. But then you look over at a completely different arena, and humanity has perfectly spun this incredible stable plate. I'm talking about Oxford scientist Sir Adrian Hill.
Yes, the European Inventor Award 2026.
Exactly. He just won it for the R21 Matrix M malaria vaccine.
And this is a perfect example of what we were talking about earlier, like the mechanics of how things work. Because this isn't just a medical breakthrough, it's really a logistical masterpiece.
It is. The stats in the briefing are wild. It provides 80% protection. It costs less than €3 a dose, and it's already in 20 countries, saving tens of thousands of lives, mostly children.
Incredible.
But the detail that caught my eye, the thing that makes it so unique, is that it stays stable for 2 years in a normal refrigerator.
Why is that the game changer here?
Okay, so it's all about the cold chain. Historically, advanced vaccines, they require ultra-low temperature freezers to remain viable.
Right.
So if you are trying to deliver a vaccine to a remote village near the equator, maintaining negative 70 degrees Celsius on a dirt road, I mean, it's nearly impossible.
We just can't do it.
Right. So by engineering a vaccine that survives in a standard everyday fridge for 2 years, Sir Adrian Hill didn't just solve a biological problem. He solved an infrastructural one. He basically bypassed the logistical bottlenecks that usually block medical access in developing nations. It's just incredible. We are mastering physical logistics to save lives. But it's fascinating because that engineering capacity, It brings us directly into the other massive infrastructure running our modern world, which is our digital landscape. We are desperately trying to engineer the logistics and legalities of artificial intelligence right now, and it is messy.
Extremely messy.
Which brings us to Anthropic's landmark $1.5 billion settlement.
Yeah, the AI rulebook is literally being written in the courts today. Anthropic reached this settlement with a class of 13,500 authors over the training of its AI model, Claude.
And the details here are so important.
Yeah.
A judge had previously ruled that merely training an AI on copyrighted text was legally considered fair use.
Right.
But the sticking point, the thing that actually got Anthropic in trouble, was that they kept a central library of about 7 million pirated books on their servers.
They retained the actual stolen goods.
Exactly. So this settlement covers about 500,000 titles.
Yeah.
But let's just pause and do the math here for a second. 1.5 billion sounds like a massive victory, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you divide it up, that is roughly $3,000 per work. I mean, to a multi-billion-dollar tech giant, $3,000 a book, it doesn't feel like a settlement. It feels like a speeding ticket.
Oh, absolutely. It's essentially an eminent domain buyout of intellectual property, but at basement prices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why about 350 authors actually opted out of this settlement to sue independently.
Good for them.
Yeah, because they recognized that their life's work was the foundational raw material that built a machine capable of generating billions in revenue. You know, this isn't just about copyright anymore. It's about retroactive data governance. Like, we drilled the oil, we built the engine, and now we're trying to figure out who actually owns the land the oil came from.
And you see that exact same scramble to build guardrails happening at the hardware level today with Apple. Apple just hit a $5 trillion market cap, which is unfathomable.
It's massive.
And it's largely because they are prepping to rebuild Siri with a Gemini-powered engine this September. But they are using this hybrid model.
Right. And the mechanics of this hybrid model, they're a direct response to the privacy fears we just discussed. Apple's promise is that simple tasks, setting an alarm or checking the weather, those stay local, right on the physical chips inside your iPhone.
Okay, that makes sense.
But complex generative tasks get kicked up to the cloud to be handled by Google's Gemini models, which are running on NVIDIA Blackwell chips. Apple is reportedly paying Google like $1 billion a year for this access.
Which immediately begs the question for me. If I ask Siri a highly personal, really complex question, and that data gets sent to Google's cloud, hasn't Apple just handed my private data over to Google?
Well, on the surface, it definitely seems that way. But this is where NVIDIA's confidential computing comes into play. Think of it like a cryptographic black box. When your data goes to the cloud, it is processed inside a secure hardware enclave. So the processing happens, the math is done, but the cloud provider, Google in this case, is essentially blindfolded. They never actually see the raw data.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an architectural guardrail. It's designed to let you use the massive power of the cloud without sacrificing the privacy of the device in your hand.
And we desperately need those guardrails because when they are missing or even just poorly designed, the societal backlash is immediate. A look at the situation on Substack today. They just partnered with a company called Pangram to introduce AI detection scores. And writers are furious.
So furious.
Because now readers can see a percentage score indicating how likely it is that a post was written by AI.
And honestly, the anger here is entirely justified when you understand how these detectors actually work. They don't magically know if a computer wrote something. They look for patterns in the text, specifically something called perplexity, which is the unpredictability of word choice, and burstiness, which is the variation in sentence length.
So an AI tends to write very uniformly, like low perplexity, low burstiness.
Exactly. But here's the critical flaw. Neurodivergent writers, or writers whose first language isn't English, they often utilize very structured, rigid, or highly deliberate sentence patterns.
Right.
So the AI detector sees that lack of burstiness and slaps a false flag on a human being, effectively punishing them for their natural cognitive or linguistic style.
It assumes suspicion first.
Yeah.
And honestly, it perfectly highlights how uneasy we are with all this technology. I mean, we are debating copyright in courtrooms. We are blindfolding cloud servers. We are arguing about text on Substack. But all of that is digital. It's invisible. What happens when you take this untamed technology and put it into the physical world, specifically into a high school classroom?
Yeah, that's when you get a collision of two very different realities, the digital utility versus the physical embodiment.
Right, because today we have two stories from the education sector that illustrate this beautifully. First, we have Anthropic offering free access to Claude for K-12 educators through June 2027. Yet teachers just have to verify their IDs. It cuts their prep time significantly, it complies with federal privacy laws, and crucially, it does not train on student data. Sure, some critics worry about tech companies embedding themselves in schools, but by and large, teachers are thrilled to have this invisible software assistant.
Right, because it exists behind a screen. It's just a tool. But the second story changes the geometry of the room entirely.
It's complete panic. The Salamanca City Central School District in New York just paused a $57,590 pilot program that would have put a humanoid robot named Sally, along with an AI assistant named Optio, in front of 500 students. And the manufacturer of this robot is a company called Realbotics.
And the state education commissioner, the teachers union, the parents, they completely revolted.
And for good reason. They cited data privacy, obviously, but they also pointed out the psychological impact of a humanoid. And to make matters worse, Realbotics is a company historically known for manufacturing adult humanoid products.
Yeah, that's a huge red flag.
To put it in perspective for you, this is like hiring a stranger to babysit your kids and then finding out they previously worked at a strip club and absolutely refused to sign a contract saying they won't sell photos of your living room.
That is a terrifying analogy, but it works.
It is an insane proposition, but it raises a deeper question. Why are we totally fine with Claude writing a history lesson plan, but a physical robot breaks our brains?
Because a physical humanoid triggers our evolutionary threat detection. When AI is just text on a screen, it's subservient to your command. But a humanoid occupies physical space. It has cameras where eyes should be. It can move autonomously through your territory.
Right.
We aren't just reacting to the software. We are reacting to the uncanny valley of a machine mimicking human agency in a room with vulnerable children. It crosses a line from digital tool to physical surveillance.
And that visceral fear of mobile physical surveillance, it isn't just contained to a school district in New York. That exact fear is driving national security policy right now.
Absolutely. The FCC just issued a massive ruling barring U.S. imports of new Chinese-made humanoid and quadruped robots, as well as connected power inverters.
They are citing data theft and cyber attack risks. And just to be clear, they aren't recalling old models that are already here. They were just blocking new ones. But you might be wondering, why throw power inverters into a ban on robots?
Right. It seems random. But an inverter connects directly to the power grid, and it relies on two-way data communication to manage energy flow. A compromised inverter can be weaponized to brick a localized grid. And similarly, a mobile humanoid robot packed with sensors and connected to a foreign network, it can map physical infrastructure, intercept local communications, or even act as a node in a mesh network.
But here's the context that makes this so complicated. China currently holds 85% of the global humanoid robot market. If they control 85% of the market and we just banned all their new imports, aren't we essentially kneecapping America's own progress in automation in the name of security?
We are deliberately taking the hit. It is the ultimate security versus innovation trade-off. The federal government is basically calculating that maintaining a fast, cheap supply chain for robotics, it's just not worth the risk of essentially importing thousands of Trojan horses. We are choosing a slower, more expensive domestic development path to ensure the hardware is completely secure.
Which explains why the venture capital world is suddenly throwing mountains of cash at AI security. Investors have poured a record $855 million into seed rounds for AI security startups so far in 2026.
That's just in seed rounds.
I know. You have companies like Oak raising $60 million, Sileak with $45 million, Jetstream with $34 million.
They recognize that the attack surface has fundamentally changed. You aren't just hacking a database anymore. You are hacking the AI system's logic, its training data, or its physical hardware. And the traditional cyber warfare landscape is only getting more aggressive alongside this.
We saw two massive developments on that front today. First, Coca-Cola's Fairlife Dairy subsidiary was hit by a ransomware attack from the Anubis gang. The hackers stole a terabyte of data and threatened to leak it all online. But Coke simply refused to pay.
Wow.
They took the hit, reported it, the data leaked, and they just resumed production.
That is a textbook display of the new corporate playbook, which is starve the attackers.
Right. And while Coke was starving them, CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, issued an urgent warning about an actively exploited WordPress flaw. And I want to break down how this actually works because it's terrifyingly simple in its execution. It's a bug called WP2 shell chained with SQL injection.
Sounds technical, but it's really not.
No. To put that in human terms, a SQL injection is basically tricking a website's bouncer into answering a confusing question, which then forces him to hand over the keys to the entire building.
Right.
Once they have the keys, WP2 shell lets the attacker slide a remote command center under the back door, allowing them to control a server without ever needing a password.
And that kind of vulnerability is exactly what extortion gangs use to cripple infrastructure, which is what makes the Justice Department's announcement today so significant. The DOJ coordinated a global takedown of the black suit extortion gang.
Finally.
Yeah, working with agencies in the UK, Germany, and others, they seized 4 servers, 9 domains, and $1 million in crypto, protecting future manufacturing and healthcare victims.
So if you look at Coke refusing to pay the ransom on one end, and the DOJ aggressively ripping down server infrastructure on the other, it is a unified strategy.
It is a zero-tolerance posture. The era of quietly paying ransoms as just a cost of doing business is effectively over. We are watching global defense go on the offensive.
We've covered so much heavy ground today. I mean, we've gone from geopolitical strategy in the Oval Office to European climate disasters, AI copyright laws, classroom robots, and global cyber takedowns. The sheer volume of it can make you feel completely untethered.
It really can.
It's incredibly easy to get swept up in the noise of the daily news cycle. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle today, contrasting the ephemeral noise with the actual long game of human history.
Because what trends on the internet today rarely dictates what actually matters a decade from now.
Exactly. Let's look at the noise dominating the feeds right now. And again, strictly looking at the neutral facts of what occurred today. Dr. Anthony Fauci testified under subpoena before the Senate Homeland Security Committee. During this, Chairman Rand Paul released over 1,000 pages of private pandemic-era diaries.
Which reignited the intense political debates over early COVID guidance and the lab leak theory.
Exactly. That is consuming the political oxygen today. We're just reporting the contents of the hearing neutrally, but that is the noise.
And on the cultural side, you have the FIFA World Cup driving massive viral engagement.
Right? Paired with these bizarre rumors that Tom Brady is in talks with WWE for a storyline involving Logan Paul, especially after they treated jabs and physical slaps at Fanatics Fest and gestures at the World Cup final. That is the noise. It is loud, it is immediate, and it is fleeting.
But then you look at the briefings that represent the long game.
The slow systemic changes.
Yes. In sports, the real story isn't a WWE stunt. It's girls' high school wrestling. It is officially the fastest growing sport in the United States right now.
That's amazing.
We are looking at 74,000 girls competing across 8,000 schools. Kentucky, Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania just held their first ever state championships. Louisiana just became the 45th state to sanction it, and the NCAA is officially adding it as its 91st championship sport in 2026.
See, that is what actual cultural momentum looks like. It isn't a viral clip. It is thousands of individuals quietly building a permanent pipeline that will change collegiate athletics for generations. And if we look even further back into history, we see an even more profound long game. French researchers just solved a mystery that has baffled scientists since 1901. They finally managed to carbon date the Ice Age paintings in the Fontagon Cave.
This is so fascinating because of the mechanism of how they did it. For over a century, researchers believe those cave paintings were created using pure mineral pigments like iron oxide. And you cannot radiocarbon date a mineral because it doesn't contain organic carbon.
Right. But using new technology, they discovered microscopic, invisible traces of charcoal hidden inside those mineral pigments. The artists had actually mixed organic burnt wood into the paint. And because they found that charcoal, they could finally date it. They discovered that a painting of a bison in that cave is exactly 13,000 years old.
That is just wild.
Think about the contrast there. Our timelines today are suffocated by 1,000 pages of political diaries, celebrity slaps, and AI lawsuits. But the real stories of consequence are built on immense patience. It is teenage girls quietly building a national sports pipeline, and an ancient cave painter who mixed a tiny bit of charcoal into their pigment, having absolutely no idea that their art would be teaching us about our own humanity 13 millennia later.
It really forces you to rethink our entire relationship with permanence. I mean, whether we are engineering a malaria vaccine that can sit in a fridge for 2 years, or debating the legal guardrails of a multi-billion-dollar AI model, or even deciding whether a robot belongs in a classroom, humans are fundamentally driven to create structures that outlast us. We're constantly trying to leave a mark.
We really are. And that is a wrap on today's deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us, for letting us help you cut through the absolute chaos of the news cycle, and hopefully for walking away just a little more well-informed than when you started.
I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today. Scientists used invisible, microscopic traces of charcoal to finally understand the mind of an artist from 13,000 years ago. It really makes you wonder, with the oceans of data we are pumping into our AI models, our cloud servers, and our digital central libraries every single second today, what is the invisible charcoal that we are leaving behind in our own digital footprints? When archaeologists look at our era 13,000 years from now, will they see the fleeting political noise, or will they see a society that was desperately beautifully trying to figure itself out?
I love that. Keep looking for the signal in the noise. Stay curious out there. And remember, no matter how heavy the headlines get, there's always something worth smiling about. We'll catch you next time.